Good morning and welcome to the Hidden Gifts of Loss podcast. I'm your host, Julie Trainer, and I have a special guest on the show today with me. Her name is Debra Postil,
Awesome.
and she and I were connected through Stacy Lauren, and she is a former prosecutor in Riverside, California. She is a community she has started a community program called Women Wonder Writers, and she mentors individuals impacted by trauma. She is also an author, and she's also recently lost her mother, and so even though we've never met, we do share that common experience. So please welcome her to the show. I'm so excited to have you, and yeah,
Yeah.
good morning.
Yeah, no, it's nice to meet you and see you in person. Well,
Thank
in
you.
person, but in video.
Yeah, exactly. Virtually in
It's a
person.
new
Yeah.
in person.
So, yeah. So tell me about, if you would like to start, tell me about your mom. What's her name? I like to say our mom's names on the show. I feel like that's
Oh, I love that.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, her name was Carolina. It's funny because the name with her was something. I'm already getting choked up here. Um, her actual name was Juanita, kind of named after her father, Juan, who was kind of this Mexican immigrant worker, which is kind of timely with Cesar Chavez Day on Monday. But she didn't, I think she wanted to be Americanized in a lot of ways. And back then, her parents migrated from Mexico. And so I think name was a big deal. So she switched her name to Carolina, but her actual given name was Juanita. So my sister and I would, to kind of like poke jokes at her, would call her Juanita from time to time. But I think back then it was, almost a mark of assimilation, trying to become American and really, have the American dream. So
Aw.
Carolina Metzke was her name. And, that she took my father's name and she left with his name too. She never switched her name back to what I love is Mares, Mares is actually her given name. So
Aw. It's a beautiful name. So
what was your mom's name?
her name was Nancy Lee Campbell Nurminen. So Campbell was her maiden name, and then
Okay.
Nurminen is a Finnish name. So that was
Ah,
her, Nancy Nurminen. Yep. So
don't know many
it'll,
Finnish people.
yeah, that will be 4 years on April 30th that she
Okay.
passed away. Yeah. And then my dad, it'll be 3 years on April 5th. So they were just under a year apart there.
Yeah, that I always wonder because my dad's still alive, but
Mhm.
he turned 80 last year, and so he's up there. And I think once that kind of age comes for me, it's like I think because my mom was also close to that. She was 79 when she passed.
Okay.
Um, and who knows, my dad can have another, 10 years in him, but I wondered how it was when the other parent passes.
Hmm. My dad, they were of that generation, where my mom basically did everything for him,
Uh,
He could microwave a meal and that was about it in the kitchen.
Yeah, no, I get it. My dad's the same with, I say like, oh, maybe he could boil water. But he's gotten a little more self-sufficient. My stepmom is still alive, but she also does a lot. She's a great French Canadian chef. So
Oh,
yeah.
nice. Oh, so what did your mom pass from?
So she got a late stage uterine cancer diagnosis
Mhm.
in, it'll be 2 years this May 13th. And
Mm.
um, so it was a quick once she got diagnosed, I want to say in November of 2021. At first she got diagnosed with a stage 1, but based on the symptoms she was having, I was like, there's no way. And so she wound up doing a full PET scan and then realized it had metastasized. So she was diagnosed kind of shortly thereafter with the stage 4. And it was a real, she even said it in her own words, I don't wish this on my worst enemy. And really dying and the death process, it was so interesting for me to watch, because as a prosecutor, I had been to autopsies, I had been to fresh people that had just passed or been killed on the scene, literally like there.
Wow.
So I had actually been around death a lot, and it's something
Mhm.
I've kind of been fascinated with. But to watch, it was a gift almost to like watch her go through it. But it was extremely, painful to watch and painful for her.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was. At the time, I was off work though, and so I got to spend a lot of time with her in those last 6 months, and
Mhm.
we even coordinated and had like a death doula there. So learning about the death positivity movement. And I used to read these, when you're looking at hospice and just different things to prepare yourself for with death. I used to read family members' comments of, oh, it was the best hospice team. And, they're just so wonderful. And when you're kind of embarking on this journey and coming to terms with it, I'm like, how could anybody write that they're so grateful for like their death team, and that this, they made it a positive experience. So I was really just, confused. But by the end of it, when you're on the other side, you really begin to learn of just how special and different and unique those hospice team members are.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my mom's was really kind of my first really up close experience with death. And we were doing it all right. Well, she was diagnosed in January and of 2020. And so I went out to LA in February, and she was stage 4 pancreatic cancer, also extremely painful. And so she had one chemo, which made her worse. And they said, no, chemo is not going to be an option for her. So we signed up with hospice, and same thing. They were the most wonderful people. And then lockdown happened a week later.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
You
So
got, yeah.
we were so isolated. So I felt like I was in charge of everything. And we had hospice, but they couldn't come as often. So we'd get phone calls mostly from hospice. We could call them if we really needed them to come out, but because it was the pandemic, it was crazy, and in the beginning, everybody was freaking out. Nobody knew what
Yeah.
was going on. So, they'd come out with
Were you
all
able to be there with her?
I was actually, and
Okay.
it was so wonderful that I did go out. I went out on Valentine's Day, and I thought I was going to stay for 10 days. I packed really light. I'm like, yeah, I thought, oh, I'm going to visit her, while she said, well, I still feel good. She would say, "Oh, it's okay. I still feel like me. You don't have to come out." And of course I insisted, because that was my mom was somebody who
Yeah.
cared for everybody, worried about everybody. If I hadn't gone out when I did, I mean, there might have been no flights, because
Yeah.
shut
Yeah.
down. They live near LAX, and you didn't hear any planes taking off, and that
Yeah.
was wild. So yes, I got to be with her. It was 10 weeks after
Okay.
I got there. And yeah, I can relate to kind of being fascinated by the process. And I think it's so great that you've had a death doula. I didn't find out about death doulas until after. And then I had one that I got to talk to her every week for an hour and tell her my stories. And she was the first person that said, you really should start a podcast about these stories, because, I mean, as you can imagine, during the pandemic, I mean, it got weird, you know.
Oh, that's
So
great. No, I mean, those the people that kind of know most about it, and like the death doula, she was able to help our family open the conversation around death, because it was really taboo to talk about it even as it was unfolding in front of our eyes. And we had like a camp in the family that just could not wrap their head around it and did not want to accept that this was happening. And so, and then I, at the time, had gotten connected to an independent caseworker, case manager, that would help families assess the situation and
Mhm.
then make recommendations as to where the person should best like live or live out their final days, whether that's assisted living, a nursing home, a board and care, the actual home and all that. So in speaking with her about 4 months before my mom passed, she's like, I'm going to be very blunt with you based on her weight loss and based on everything you're telling me. Let's do the math. And she was just very, and that's what I needed to hear because I'm an analytical, logical lawyer.
Yes.
I need the facts just broken down. And so once she shared the math and she said, sure, you could do one chemo treatment, but what does that get you? And is that the quality of life that she wants? And so we walked through all of that. But once I kind of knew and had that information, two things. It was good because it allowed me to sort of plan and begin to live in the reality of this is the end. But it also caused a lot of friction with my family because,
Mm.
you have to be very hopeful and optimistic and, we're going to beat this and we're going to fight it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, and I'm sure many families, go through the same similar things as well. But my mom, yeah, they wanted to do chemo. There was a whole treatment plan for her. And even the
Mhm.
doctors, they couldn't give any realistic outcomes. They were very hopeful as well.
Yeah.
And but she actually refused to. They were going to implant the port one day for the chemo, and she refused to go. She just flat out refused.
Wow.
And that kind of put a wrench in everything because I think everybody was sort of just assuming she's going to go along with the plan. Uh,
Yeah.
but she did not. And she said things like, because she had been in pain for a long time. I think even
Yeah.
before she started getting, the treatment or at least the care for, what they knew she had been diagnosed with. But she was very honest of, I don't know that, not that she was giving up, but that it was enough. She was kind of had been coming to terms with it herself.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she was also, she had a lot of life left in her. Her mom lived till she was 98. So
Wow.
there was a lot of reluctancy to leave, mostly her family, like to leave her family. But
Yeah. Well, I know. It's so hard to see them to it's so hard to like let go, to say goodbye to them. There was in my family, it was uh I don't want to say like stoicism, but there was like humor. There was like a dancing around it. It
yeah,
was happening, but let's all just try to to keep it as normal as we can.
yeah,
And I had so much fear around like what's going to happen like in that actual moment. And I would ask
uh,
the hospice nurses, how am I going to know? What am I supposed to do? Right? And nobody in my family cried. That was like sort of a taboo thing in our household. And I just remember this one night I was in my parents' house. It was a 888 square foot house, a little California bungalow. And I was lying in my childhood bedroom. My daughter and I were sharing an air mattress. And a song came on Spotify, and that just kind of broke me open because it hit me. I'm like, this is it. This is really, I'm here to say goodbye to her. And it hadn't really hit me before. But there was this hidden gift in that moment in that I realized, oh, this is what it's gonna feel like emotionally. And I had this like knowing that I was gonna be able to get through it. And yeah, it's like, but I get it. Your mom sounds like she was kind of feisty. And my mom, she was too. She had the port surgery and it just knocked her down. It just messed her up. And I love that your mom just said no.
Oh
Not
yeah,
doing
she
that.
was. It became there was a time like in her journey where she was strong enough to get herself up and walk,
Mhm.
and but barely, right? And so she was very fragile. And of course, everybody, especially at the nursing home, knowing that I was a lawyer, were just freaked out. They didn't want her to fall,
Oh my
right?
God,
But
yeah.
what it was causing was like this sort of paranoia because they were almost like stalking her and following her. She's very independent. Like you don't do that with my mom. And so it was like so much of her personality, right? Of came out. But the thing about the music, I'd love, like, it really helps you emote, and that kind of goes into the cultural arts and expression. My mom was not like a, very stoic too,
Yeah.
similar to your family. And but the music really helped. I think it, like, because I would go and I would play, she loved everything from like disco to um like mariachi music, and that
Oh,
was music that really helped her emote, because I I half understand Spanish. I didn't understand all the words of songs, but I knew the ones that really like touched her, because she was able to, basically cry and that kind of thing. But then Renaissance and classical, which I didn't realize my mom liked, became very soothing for her. So I would get her those silent headphone disco things, and I would get her and like other people from the nursing home like wheeled up in their wheelchairs, and I would put them on, like each of them, and we would have these like little DJ parties of different music.
oh, I love that.
She even got a marriage proposal, which was so adorable. But we were like at a tea party in the nursing home, and this like older gentleman just basically like, asks for her hand. I mean, there was so many little hidden gifts, down to like when she finally passed. It was my sister, my niece, who's in her 20s, and then myself. And we had been saying goodbye to her, day after day. It's okay, mom, go, because they were shocked that she was like still, kind of on hospice, quite frankly.
Yes.
And you begin to learn how strong our bodies are and
Yeah.
resilient they are. That was shocking to me, right? You can have somebody that,
Yes.
um, and by that time, she's obviously very comfortable and having morphine and that kind of thing, which was, it's challenging too, because once the hospice team comes in, you're balancing between the lucidity of being able to communicate and that kind of thing versus being out of pain.
Right.
And where's the fine balance? I know my mom would have she resisted pain, medication for a long time.
Mhm.
But it was also it was a relief, right? Because she's able to sort of be without pain finally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they kept telling us like, say goodbye. Is there somebody left that needs to come and see her? She's, she's and then yeah, it was a beautiful, like, it was 2 a.m, and the hospice nurse, they just know kind of when somebody's going to take their last breaths, and
They
she woke us
do.
up and we were all just by her. It was like very magical.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's so,
And how the energy leaves the body, right?
mhm.
It's really it's amazing.
It is. It really is it's very sacred, to be a part of that process. You think about your mom brought you into the world and then you help your mom go out.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
to experience that firsthand, with a lot of support too.
Yeah. Yeah. When my mom, it was 3 in the morning for my mom. And yeah, the nurses would tell me, "Oh, she probably has a couple weeks." And I was just like, "There's no way she can go on like this for a couple weeks?" And like
Yeah.
you said, like how strong the body is. But in our situation, there was no one there except it was me and the hospice nurse. My daughter stayed the whole time. She was 23 at the time. My dad had gone to bed. Her breathing changed that day. And a hospice nurse came out at about 7 o'clock and they said, "Well, call us again if anything changes." I was thinking they were going to be there with me like the whole time, right? So it was just me, and then another hospice nurse came out at 10. I was actually glad my daughter was asleep. I didn't want to wake up my dad because he wasn't going to contribute anything to the situation. So, and I mean, because I was pretty much her full-time caregiver because she was at home. I was exhausted. There was no takeout food. None of her friends could come over. It was COVID, right? So this hospice nurse came and she was, they started administering more morphine and more Ativan, and she had fentanyl patch. And I was so tired that my head was like literally just falling over. And the hospice nurse said, "It's okay for you to lie down." which had never occurred to me that I could just go off vigil, right? Even for a minute.
Mhm.
And I laid down on the couch, and then when I woke up, she had just taken her last breath. So I was there, but I wasn't, and then I just sat there with her, and yeah, there was like a fascination. And a lot of people kind of have that resistance. They're like, how could you even like watch that? Like my brother didn't want to be there. He's like, I want to remember her the way she was a few weeks ago. And even though
Yeah.
he lives in El Segundo too. So then I woke my dad, and it was just me and my dad just sitting by her in the living room awkwardly. The hospice nurse left. So that was a really strange moment. And, I was just like, wow, I wonder what it would have been like to have support and family all around, but, so I love that. I mean, but however it turns out, it's still, I think, a gift to be with them, you know?
Yeah, no, and some of the things you're saying, with the different family members, yeah, people have their different ways of handling it or wanting to remember, right?
Hmm.
And it's interesting because even after there's a period of time, at least that I experienced, where all you can remember, like all I could remember about my mom was those like painful 6 months, right? And I
Yeah.
think the brain has a tendency, it's kind of like, if there's 10 things that go right, if you're giving a speech and then you've got that one person that makes a
Yeah.
negative comment, you're going to remember the negative one.
Yeah.
So I know that the brain has sort of this survival instinct to, the danger area is where we need to focus on, right, for our own survival mechanism. But I found that also play out with the death situation where all that I could remember about her was just this, the bad stuff that the physical, the frail, the loss of weight, just all the horrific stuff. So, but I found over time though, and my aunt was great with this of like, remembering the positive things, remembering everything, down from like, being a kid. So I find that now, like during this period, it's more of remembering all that stuff.
Hmm. And so in the aftermath, did you experience any little like coincidences where you maybe felt like she was there, or like
Yeah, yeah.
unexpected things that happened? Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, there's been several. And one thing when my grandfather, her father had passed, at the time my parents had a photo business, like a 1 hour photo Fromix business. And I remember as a girl, I must have been like 8 or 9 at the time, but they had developed a photograph and it was back in the days, the Pope had visited. And so there was a picture that they had developed, one of the customers had come through. And in the back of the picture, somebody in the audience looked exactly like Juan, her father. And so when my mom saw it, I remember she's like, "Oh, that's a sign he's arrived." And so I've kind of grown up believing, in this kind of Catholic idea of there's a period of, somebody's going to go through purgatory, whatever it is they're doing,
Right.
then finally they're going to arrive. So I've always just sort of accepted that as a possibility.
Sure.
And so I was always waiting like for this sign, it's wow, it's been a long time, mom, like kind of joking with her in my head, like you must have been paying for your sins for a while. And there was a couple of things shortly after. My mom loved the horse races. Like
Mhm.
their photo business was right next door to Santa Anita racetrack.
Oh,
She went over there. She loved gambling. She loved every birthday. We would sit at the Turf Club restaurant in Arcadia and just like take her to, her favorite, that was her favorite experience. So now living, and we used to come to Del Mar as kids, also taking the train, doing the horse
mhm.
race thing. And so shortly after her death, like I would drive on the freeway, and this happened a couple times. And right in the area of the Del Mar racetrack, you would see like these two doves, white doves, just like flying over like the freeway area. I don't know. They could have
Wow.
but I was like, that was happening where I was like, oh, hi, mom, I see you. So
Uh-huh.
that was kind of like one little indicator. And it was always in that same area, always by the horse race.
Wow. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
okay. Um, and then the next incident happened. Well, there's been several. Like
Mhm.
I went to Hawaii, I go to Hawaii during the Maui fires. My job was sending me over there because
Oh.
they're in fire litigation. So
Oh,
there would be little things like just kind of walking out in this kind of amazing setting in Hawaii. And it was challenging to be there, but then there would be little hidden gifts like, gosh, I'm so lucky to be here. It's such a beautiful island. And I'm like, gosh, just setting gratitude. Like, thank you for this
yes,
opportunity, everybody.
yes.
And I look to my left and they have these like artists that will showcase their artwork through kind of the lobby and that kind of thing. And I look to my left and there's totally random, but this particular artist had a thing of painting like childhood memory things. And so it was Bob's Big Boy with his like, if you can
Oh,
imagine the one like
yes.
at Toluca or whatever we used to go to, um, with his like, famous, and my mom loved Bob's
Oh my God.
and so it was just kind of funny because it caught me off guard of like, I wouldn't expect to see it at this really nice hotel
Hawaii,
in
right?
Hawaii.
Like how random,
And
but
so
not.
I was like, "Oh, hi, mom. I could tell you're still watching over." So like, it's kind of this acknowledgement. Same thing. I was at an airport coming back from one of those Maui trips, and I look, and there's a woman that looks identical to my mom. She was a Hawaiian woman. And my mom she was Mexican, but she could pass for like Filipino, Hawaiian. Like she used to get like, because she had kind of this darker, she looked like me a lot, or I looked like her, but like kind of a darker complexion. So you can kind of mix in your chameleon. And this, like, she looked like a Hawaiian woman, but she was like standing up against, waiting for her flight, totally innocuous. But her side profile just like shocked me. And so
Yeah.
again, it's like, oh mom, like you've arrived. And then kind of the one that recently I've been involved in it's like an equestrian equine where it's a really sad case where when they cremate the horse, there's a whole presentation that goes, the pet cemetery coordinates with the vet, and they basically deliver the ashes, of this particular horse that was cremated on his own, and then they present the tale. And there were some things that went wrong in this. So I was like really trying to, this isn't my normal type of case. It's a trespass to chattel, breach of contract, kind of this negligence tort. But I was like very invested in this case, and just really fighting hard for, because I was imagining it, because I went through the whole thing of, I needed to see my mom before she was cremated. I went through the whole forest lawn experience, spent time with her even as she was, they had just wheeled her out right before she was going to get cremated. So I was familiar enough with the process. And really, pets and animals, whether it's a dog, a horse. I mean, this particular horse had a lot of meaning to the owner. And so there was like, but there was something inside of me that was like very outraged at like kind of what had happened, that this family did not,
Mm.
get what they thought they were going to get. And um, but I couldn't really put my finger on it for a while. And ultimately, and the owner was just kind of so pleased of how I was handling the case. She sent me like a beautiful necklace and like flowers and just great gratitude and appreciation. And it dawned on me, I was like, and the owner's son had also passed away. And so that was the connection with the horse. And he had passed
Wow.
away in May. The horse passed away in May. My mom had passed away in May. And I was like, oh, there's like some synergistic connection here with this
Yeah.
particular case. Mom loved the horse races.
Wow.
And so it was kind of like, I don't know if it's, you make meaning out of things to look for relevance, but then there's some things that just sort of like happen where it's, triggers or activates some sort of memory or reminder
Yeah.
of my mom. And there's other things like, even as a prosecutor, having worked with a lot of next of kin or people that, they're family members, and you hear just a lot of stories, particularly some that stand out as, especially when they're taken so quickly and abruptly, especially the young ones, where you'll have a mom that, um, for example, there was a girl, she had died in a bad car accident. And so it was a vehicular homicide, and the guy had been driving under the influence, and she was a passenger in the car, and she was like 16 or 17 at the time.
Um,
But I spent a lot of time with the family because we had to do two trials. The first one hung, and really got to know her. She eventually came into um, work with our nonprofit as well. And she used to tell a lot of stories that, her daughter's room, Nicole's room, everybody knew there was a presence in there when you went in, because she would have family members stay. And it was always things happening in that room that different family members in different scenarios would talk about. Um, she also had like a premonition before Nicole had passed a week before. And so you start hearing these kind of unique stories. There was another one, it was many years later, her son had passed, and I was doing a parole hearing like 20, 30 years after the death. And so I come in, and again, this family it was almost like it had happened yesterday to them. This one was a homicide, a
wow.
shooting by a gang member.
Oh my
And
God.
he was young. He was this non-gang member, lively, kind of
Mhm.
teenager that just rolled up to the liquor store at the wrong time. And
Mm,
he winds up getting shot. But the mom, she was saying that, like, yeah, like sometimes when she walks, she'll turn and there's a corner that turns and she sees his face, like the person is walking towards her. And that's happened multiple times.
mhm.
Um, and so you begin to kind of hear these just, different stories. um yeah, so I do believe in the hidden gifts.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so glad. I know. I just feel like those things, yeah, I believe it. You could say, well, you don't really have proof or whatever, but you know, it's yeah, it's them
Yeah,
saying
there's
hi.
that, I don't know what you call those kind of coincidences. But then there's also like the supernatural, like growing up.
Mhm,
And I share this story, and I find that a lot of people have the same similar experiences. But
mhm.
in the house that I grew up in until I was about 16, definitely had a spirit in it. And my mom knew that. It was like there was a lot of stories even behind that. And even still to today, having a conversation like as an adult with my adult cousin, and we had never talked about it before, but her confirming things that happened when she used to come to my house, and she's now like 10 years older than me. But hearing these stories of, wow, like that wasn't just some, story that like,
Can imagine it.
yeah. And so the kind of like getting those confirmations, and just things happening. And that particular, my mom had done a little bit of research on her house, and apparently it was somebody who had died in a plane crash, that never quite finished his house. He had designed it and it was being built, and dies in a plane crash. And so she believed, or she would tell us, like, that's who it is. And so kind of
Wow,
growing up and like having these just experiences I couldn't explain at all. And you kind of like, yeah, there's something else, kind of out there.
definitely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Oh, I've really, I just love these stories. I absolutely love hearing other people's stories about their experiences around, yeah, death and we had I'll share this one. It's a weird little story that happened between my brother and I. My mom, she loved a clearance sale. She loved Christmas. She had over 100 bins of just Christmas things in her garage. She was a little bit of a hoarder. And she would send you like gifts sometimes that you were like, oh, thanks. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this, you
So
know?
funny.
But so she had given, I don't know when, but at some point she had given my brother this blanket that looks just like a tortilla. It's a tortilla shaped blanket. It's round and it has like brown marks on it. So it looks like it was, that's where it got browned when it was being cooked, right? So I know this is weird, but yeah, let me bear with me, right? So okay, so what a random thing. Like I had no idea there was even a tortilla blanket, right? So my nephew had texted me. He's 13, but he's kind of on the spectrum. So he's not like a typical 13-year-old. So he just discovered texting and he'll say, Aunt Julie, why do dogs chew on their blankets? So the dog that they have was my parents' dog, and so they adopted the dog, and she's just such a sweet dog. So she, and our dog chews on her blankets too, right? So he texted me, and I sometimes I'll take a screenshot of the text and I'll send it to my brother because they're so cute. And my brother said that, yeah, Floppy really likes the tortilla blanket, and she chewed it up. So it's right around Christmas time, which was my mother's absolutely favorite holiday. My brother went on Amazon and he ordered some furnace filters. Okay, completely unrelated to a tortilla blanket, right? But when the package arrived, it was the tortilla blanket, the exact same color, size,
Oh, that's odd.
everything. And he looked at the tracking and it was picked up from the warehouse on Christmas Eve. I mean,
Wow.
of all the millions of
Yeah,
things,
that's
right, you could get out of
really
an Amazon
freaky.
warehouse. It wasn't like the wrong size furnace filter.
That's a good one.
So yeah, I had to look it up on Amazon, and
Did
there was
she
a
have like that sense of humor?
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, that is so something she would have done.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, I
like,
love it.
oh, Floppy, that's a dog name. Floppy needs another tortilla blanket, so I better get it over to them for Christmas. She was so cute. She would all her friends would exchange gifts at one, and she'd keep a list of, we found these lists in the garage when we had to clean it out the year after. Well, anyway, she would keep a list of everyone she gave a gift to and what she gave them.
Oh, wow.
And one of the reasons why she did that is because she would also save all the gifts to regift if they were something she couldn't use.
She didn't want to like send the
Want to
same thing again.
yeah. Or she'd put a little piece of masking tape on the bottom of the gift, say, from Merlene, Christmas 1993. Yeah, so the tortilla blanket. So the picture on Amazon is they had wrapped this tortilla blanket up so it looked like a burrito with like the foil underneath, like how
Oh,
you'd get a
funny.
burrito like at Chipotle or something. And the woman is like hugging the tortilla blanket and it says, cool gifts for all the people you loved
Oh,
on
wow.
Amazon, right? Loved, past tense.
Wow.
So yeah, my brother and I, we really tripped on that one. We're like, that
Yeah, that's a good
it
one.
has to be mom. Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, it gives me chills.
We did. So I ordered a tortilla blanket for our dog too. So,
Oh, that's adorable.
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So is there anything, do you have any other hidden gift stories that haven't come up yet? Or is there anything
I think
else
the
you'd
ones
like
that
to
always
share?
kind of stick with me, well, even, I mean, just my ghost stories. There's like, as a young girl, kind of sitting in and this is different, I think, from a hidden gift, but I think at least for me, it gave me an early age understanding that there are things that can't be explained, or that there's some other kind of universe or world.
Yeah.
Um, we'd be sitting on my couch of a living room, and we had these hardwood floors underneath our carpet, and you could definitely hear somebody walking. It was a big, large living room, and like it was just bizarre, but you would hear the walking footsteps. That was
Wow.
something that a few years back, my cousin and I were having lunch, and this came up, and she started sharing that same story of what she observed coming over to my house. And that to me was like bizarre, because I had asked her, did anybody like share this with you or anything? And she said no, and she wouldn't have had any reason, to lie to me about it. But it
Right.
was the same similar kind of things that would happen. I know, like, we had this bread box, and so my mom and I went grocery shopping one day and came back, and we used to put the bread in the bread box, but then leave the door open because we didn't have air conditioning or anything, just so it wouldn't get moldy.
Hmm.
And I remember like doing that, leaving, and all of a sudden I'm in the living room, like 10 yards away, and hear this like plop on the ground. Of course, it was the bread, but when I went back, the bread was clearly across the kitchen, the entire kitchen. And so as a kid, I was like trying to make sense of these things. So I would like
Yeah.
go up, I would put the loaf, I would okay, let's just say it like, it fell out. Like how far could it physically go? Like
Yeah.
physics are behind this. And like there was no explanation. There was another weird instance where, I used to have this bedroom and both doors were closed and my parents were in our breakfast room and the room next to it. And I specifically remember like there was an ironing board out I had in my room and this pencil that was like kind of the same like height as the ironing board is like traveling in space, like somebody's holding it and walking with it. And I used to do the same thing. Like I opened up the doors to my parents, where they were. I was like, did you guys throw that pencil in here? Like, what's going on? They're looking at me like, go back to do what you're doing. What are you doing? Um, and I would kind of like push the pencil off the ironing board. Like, is it possible in space? It would. So there were things like that that I just could never explain, but I also was not afraid of whatever it was. I was like able to recognize that. I never wanted to like wake up in the middle of the night to have to use the restroom or something and get out of bed. Like that was one thing. Like I would just because I didn't want to see anything more. I
Mhm.
knew that, like just because it was like bizarre to me. Um, but I kind of think that, and then when my mom would explain like where this kind of spirit is coming from, she never told anyone like about this. And she sold that house I think when I was like a senior in high school. And we never really talked about kind of the ghost outside of, you know, anything. But when she sold the house, one of her really good friends tells her, "Oh, did you tell the new owners about the ghost?" And she's like, "How did you know about that?" Because my mom had never shared that.
Whoa.
And she goes, well, the family before you had little kids, and the little daughters that she would watch would tell her stories about this ghost. So she always knew, but never said anything to us. We never said anything to her. So it was kind of like this sort of confirmation where outside of yourself.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, I've kind of done a little bit of research on it. And I've been curious about the connection of like ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, or people that grow up with that. And like, does it give some sort of sense of like hope that there's something more, something else? Um, does it present to those that are impacted by trauma in a way that it wouldn't present? But a part of me, like when I've shared stories, it could be universal, and maybe those people were impacted by trauma as well. I don't know. But I've wondered if there's like a connection there, or is it something in the brain that triggers these sort of perceptions or experiences that is tied to trauma? I haven't really done any in depth, but I've always been sort of curious about it. And then kind of fast forward to us watching our moms pass. There is this like you see the spirit leave. Like I've definitely recognized that. And there was a big difference between, like in time, right? The spirit kind of like eventually leaves, the energy of a body
Yeah.
sort of leaves, and as time passes, eventually it's gone. But where does it go? Um,
Yeah.
Back to like, when I saw her at the mortuary before she was cremated, it was a very clear like all spirit is gone. There's
Mhm.
no presence around this physical body. So that's always kind of been fascinating, to me. And I don't know. It in terms of hidden gifts, I don't think I have any others. I think that I think we all continuously like experience them, and having like the memories of our past loved ones, those
Yeah.
experiences I think will, they constantly replay, even like this dress I'm wearing today. My mom gave it to me. And it's one of those things like I'll wear, but it's an intentional, today's Easter, it's an intentional like wearing. When I go out, I'll get like a bazillion compliments on it, but it's always this like, yeah, like my mom gave me this dress type of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
love that. Yeah, I have a few things like that too that I'll wear, and then she's right there,
yeah, yeah. After she passed, I would meditate a lot, and
Mhm.
I was able to just experience having, like, if I wanted to have coffee, and that was like one of our favorite pastimes, right? You sit and like, she was really big on like going out to meals
Oh
and
my
having,
God, my mom too. She
that was
loves
one
that.
thing that was really hard once that she's unable to eat or unable to like sit and have coffee. It was like, whoa,
Mhm.
that whole experience, now we have to do it differently
Yeah.
as she was
Yeah.
passing. But yeah, through meditation, it was like immediately after, where I know the moment I meditate, I can actually just be with her, or like my body will recognize the same experience versus if I was just sitting with her. And I think people do that through prayer. They could do it through different ways, but
Mhm.
it's just, she's not here in the physical.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're still here. I believe that. They're not ever really gone, you know?
Yeah.
Because I love that, that question of, well, what happens to that energy when it leaves, right? I mean, if you think about physics, energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? I mean, they're somewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's such a gift when you feel their presence around you. Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Wow. Well, thank you so much. I
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
just
Thanks for,
appreciate it. It's been really wonderful chatting with you and about your mom and everything, and your stories are just wonderful.
thank you. Yeah, keep doing this. I think it's so, it's therapeutic. And I think it's, I think a lot of people will have these sort of hidden gifts to share.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be quite common and universal for people.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's therapeutic for sure, and it's very healing. And, I know when I was really going through, like in the beginning, when you're really grieving, and your brain is just trying to get around like what happened. Having my end of life doula that I could talk to every week, it was the most healing thing. And it's one of the reasons why I also feel like my mom is very much behind me wanting to do a podcast,
Yeah.
and tell her story in this book. But yeah, there,
Yeah. I remember having, the cancer angel, which was really, they pair you up, which was so helpful at the time. I would recommend anybody.
mm,
But the American Cancer Society, I believe, is behind it, where I got connected with another daughter of a mother with uterine cancer. And so it was, her mom had already passed, but it was this unique connection. Um, that was
wow.
wonderful. But it's like all those people I remember, right? From her hospice nurses to like the cancer angel. Yeah, it was really, makes me think, maybe to go and like do that for someone else as well.
Yeah, you know what? I'm so glad you said that. I did not know about the cancer angels. That would have been
Yeah, I can
amazing.
email you kind of the contact information. Um,
Okay.
and even there's I know at the beginning, like you're trying to wrap your head around so much information, that even the cancer hotlines, I remember speaking with, I don't know if they were registered nurses or people, but they were not willing to diagnose or anything like that, but they were willing to kind of share, this is what to expect, and here's some questions to ask your doctor. Here's some things to think about. It was very helpful at a time that like we didn't have a whole lot of answers, right? Because you're waiting to get in to see the doctors, you're getting
Mhm.
different information that's coming at you. So I found it really helpful. My holistic doctor at the time, he said, at least for me, like if I need an answer to something, like write an email, pick up the phone, like get it answered, because there's not much you can control with this disease. It's,
No.
but if you can control kind of getting that information or making decisions based on it, yeah. So, but I'll email you that kind of contact.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I'm gonna stop recording.